Hi and welcome to this transit call, Walking the Wheel with the Archetypes. We have the Sun in gate 16 this week. We are in line 3 right now. And I'm going to start with a little presentation as usual. And we might look at the current transits, and then we'll have a conversation where we're weaving gate, hexagram, gene key, archetype 16. Today, what's on the agenda? It is the enthusiast archetype, number 16, in transit from May 27th to June 1st. This is the gate of skills. It is the hexagram that we call enthusiasm. The frequency band in the gene keys goes from the shadow of indifference to the city of mastery, and the human pathway is versatility. This is the depiction by Lindsay Foy of the enthusiast archetype. The first way we look at it is through the I Ching. So here we see that this archetype is in the part of the wheel where we have the earth trigram on the bottom. All these gates archetype are going to have 3 yin lines, which is earth on the bottom. And here you see the other archetypes that live in that part of the wheel. 8 elements according to the Chinese way of looking at it. So in this specific case, like I said right before, very much like the weather here in Florida right now, we have thunder over earth. We have 8 gene keys or 8 hexagrams that are made up of 2 of the same element. So gene key 2 is made up of 2 times earth, and gene key 51 is made up of 2 times thunder. So when we look at this energy, how it weaves, we could say that the shadow of indifference is agitated dislocation. The gift of versatility is initiating orientation, and the city of mastery is awakened unity. I love the city in this one. And here we're looking at the astrological wheel, and we are saying or seeing that we have gate 16 in the part of the wheel where we have Gemini, which is the trickster, the magician, the bard, the yetzer. This is mutable air. Gemini is the inquisitive air, the wind above and below that trickles our imagination. And here you see in the wheel, it is the 3rd sign, the 3rd house. It has to do with mindset, thinking, speaking, writing, leading, interactions with siblings, and communication, and also short journeys. And here the ruler is Mercury. And Mercury is the fastest of the planets in the solar system. It takes 88, 89 days to go around the whole entire zodiac and speak to all the other planets and all the signs. So that's part of that versatility as well that we see in this gate. We are in the quarter of civilization. The theme here is that the purpose is fulfilled through form. Starting in gate 2 and all these gates here, they're going to have either earth or mountain on the bottom trigram, or in the quarter of civilization, very connected to what we tangibly build, right, in form, what we can touch. And here we are looking at the human design. So the 16 is a throat gate. This center has to do with communication, expression, manifestation, metamorphosis. This is the gate of skills. You have a lot of different archetypes that live in this center or this hub. The harmonic gate is the 48. This is a projected channel, the channel of the wavelength, a design of talent. The theme here, find the thing you can give yourself to totally. This is earned talent. And then we have a few keywords. So for the enthusiast, we have spontaneity, talent, and finesse. And for the librarian archetype, we have taste, solutions, and profundity. And then the programming partner on the other side of the wheel, we have the 9. So anybody who has the 16 in their activation sequence are also going to have the 9. The same thing if you have 16 in the nodes in human design, you're also going to have the 9. You can see that they are mirror opposites in the wheel. So if the 16 is in Gemini, we have the 9 in Sagittarius. Same thing, mirror opposites in terms of the hexagram. Wherever the 16 has a yin line, the 9 is going to have a yang line, and the other way around as well. So last thing, this is collective circuitry, where the keynote is sharing. And in the collective circuitry, this specific gate is in the understanding circuit, which is the logical circuitry, the understanding circuitry, where we can see a pattern and we can improve that pattern and we can share and go towards the future in a way that is more constructive. And then the last place to go to is Sergio Arboleda, his way of depicting this hexagram, where he's playing with those elements, the earth and the thunder. And this is how and actually the verb that he's using for this is promote. And he's also saying that when we have thunder and earth, this would be the same thing as saying that we have Aries energy and Cancer energy together. Because thunder is where everything starts. Before it's even lightning, it's that vibration before it starts. So that has very much to do with the first sign of Aries and the first house. And then the same thing when we have earth, that's very connected to Cancer or the mother, which is the fourth sign in the fourth house. And this would be a little symbol that we can use, which in some way feels like here in the middle, we turn in with a mastery, we identify with something, and here we're like sharing, externalizing that talent out into the world. And I think there's one more thing I wanted to say, which is actually connected to human design. I was reading the Line Companion today, and what Ra was saying is that if the 16 is a hanging gate and it's not connected to a motor, we're going to have the skills, but we're not going to have the energy. And that is something that often gets lost when we're looking in the gene keys. We don't look at the mechanics. So we think that just because we have the 16 activated, it's going to be so easy because we're going to be identifying with these things and we're going to share our talent with the world. But if you read the Line Companion, you're going to see that it's way more complicated than that. And each line have the specific kind of way of being able or not able to share those skills with the world. And also he was writing that the 16 actually, it's not always looking for the 48. It's like, oh, depth, of course. But if there's no energy, it's not no point that there is depth. So that's the 16 sometimes actually look at the 58 to see, is there fuel? Is there energy? Can we put this into manifestation? Because that's actually what the throat cares about, but it needs to be connected to a motor in order for that to happen. So I thought that was a little bit interesting, and to continuously bring in the mechanics of human design. And I think some of you might have seen this week, I shared it in our group as well, there was some criticism against Gene Keys of not honoring the Striding authority and the very basis of human design. And to me, I don't need to point fingers. I don't need to use like any bad words or say that things are like stolen. I don't think that a transmission can be stolen. I feel like there are belief systems, and these transmissions that to me are the same, human design and Gene Keys, are living transmissions. And we are all here to tune into what we identify with, Gate 16, in those systems. And then there are new things that come through us. And sometimes we have had Rob here with the lost octave. He's tapping into something new in the same transmission, right? And some of us are deepening in detail in some things. So to me, it's important to be in reverence and respect for the transmission, and to the best of our ability with respect and also honoring the source. That's how we play with them. And then something unique can come through us and we can be vessels for that. So yeah, I think maybe a snapshot as well at right now, if I can go back, just a little snapshot. I have somebody else's chart up, maybe I should be better. So from having had a lot of emphasis in Taurus for the last month, we are now seeing a lot of emphasis in Gemini, where Jupiter just went into Gemini. It's going to stay here for a year. We have the Sun and we have Venus. So a lot of emphasis. We have interesting conjunctions today with in the 16 with the Sun and Venus. Wow. This is definitely something we could speak about as well. This, I would say, is the light part of Venus, where things are illuminated, and also our values and love and beautiful things. And then Venus goes in the underworld, and then it's a completely other process of the feminine going into the underworld, and she comes up and she meets with the sun. So we have this Venus star point, right? That's happening right now, where we have the conjunction between the sun and Venus. So that is powerful. And then we have a conjunction with those two, Mercury and Uranus. So here we have like communication and a kind of higher octave of communication, or I would say also nervous system and a higher possibility of activation in Kundalini as well, happening in Taurus. So this can definitely be felt in our bodies. I did feel quite a lot of nervous energy today, and that energy could possibly also be traced back here in Aries, which is an fire element, where we have Chiron and Mars coming together. And that's a bit of that war energy and the places that we need to heal. And so there is powerful energy today. And those three different conjunctions are quite different. They are in different elements, and they're very different planetary bodies that are coming together in those 3 points. So depending on your chart, depending on your mechanics, you may feel one or another of these way more strongly. And also just looking at the body graph right now, we have that whole channel that we looked at, 1648, and that is activated, like we said, by the Sun and Venus. And then we have the 48 now being the South Node. So that's going to be all this week. As long as we're in the 16, we're going to have that whole channel. So let's tune into the field and feel what's happening. Who wants to start to share or ask or reflect?
I can share.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so I found that this is one of the trends that I noticed really quickly, but I'm left angle cross demands. And so 52 and 48 are both my design and personality sun. And so both of those connect. Both the 16 and 9 connect for me. And yeah, and in quite big ways, because I'm a splenic manifester, that like 2148 as my connecting. But I mean, I'm also 1858 is meant to be my splenic authority. But I'm split deaf, so I don't actually have the root going all the way to my throat. And so now it's like my root's actually going all the way to the throat. And I've been struggling with this whole, like, if my 2145, I should say, has my direct energy to the throat, how am I meant to use splenic authority to, like, wait? Because the 2145 isn't really a channel that wants to wait so much as it's got energy or not energy. But the way I have been trying to work with it is that the splenic's more about like not doing things, and the thing about defined will is that it's very on-off for energy. It's like, you know that the energy is there for something or not. And so you don't really have to worry about it because you just got no energy to worry about it, like in general. Like if you got energy, then you can use the energy and you can just use the splenic to like not do certain things and use it as a caution. But then you don't have to use it as a caution if it's not there because you're not really doing much anyway. So that's what I've been working with. But like now that this transit came in, I'm like, who's actually got 16 without having 48 to use as actually a model to close my split deaf? Because it's the only gate that closes it. And it's like a lot of the people that I know that have got it have got actually both ends of the channel, and so whenever it's a channel, it's harder to understand the energy. I feel like because it's just like they can connect across it, like and do stuff. But my understanding at the moment seems to be that 16 is quite an energizing kind of initiating energy, even though it's like a not manifesting channel. Is it? Like what kind of channel is it? It's not projected, is it? What is it? So yeah,
Well,
anyway, that's where I'm at. Oh.
yeah. So thank you for sharing. So if I understood it right, what you were speaking to was having the channel 4521, which of
Yeah.
course, then you have the throat connected to a motor, and that is powerful energy, like ego manifesting energy, but then as well having the spleen defined. And when we look at definition in our chart, we always start from the emotional, then the sacral, then the spleen. So if you have the spleen defined, even if you have this channel, your inner authority is splenic, and you're speaking to
Yeah.
this kind of dilemma of living with this very strong ego manifesting channel, and then at the same time your inner authority splenic. I believe that Roy Rahu had the same thing, if I remember right. He did have this channel. He
Yes.
also had, I know somebody else who has the same channel, but he has the sacral defined, and he always feels like he is an ego manifester with sacral timing, so that he gets the timing for the spleen, if it's leaning in or not, and then really it's the ego that says, I have energy, this is here to be manifested. So for you, I guess it would be a similar dialogue with that spleen. That and remember, the spleen usually says no. The spleen usually doesn't say go. So that can just be something to remember, because the spleen is the oldest awareness centers that's allowing us to survive and to jump if there is something that can kill us. So it's very instinctive in that sense. And you also spoke to the fact of being overpowered. I remember when you have a hanging gate and somebody has a whole channel. And yes, it's a bit different. You can look at it from the outside, which is easier than we have what we call dominance channel. If we don't have a hanging gate, we can look at somebody else's channel and we can be fascinated by it. When we have a hanging gate, it's almost like we feel a bit overpowered, because their energy is, of course, they having the whole process. Then it's not as easy to express our hanging gate. Yet, if we are in a high frequency, it doesn't really matter. We don't have to compete on who gets to express and how it's done either. So yeah, many important thing in terms of mechanics was what you brought up here. And always when you have the throat connected to a motor, that is going to be a very strong connection in your chart. And then if you have a different inner authority, there's always going to have to be learning to live and feel into what is your way to make decisions, what is your way to move in the world.
What kind of channel was it though? Like, it's not a projected channel, but
Oh yeah, I didn't understand the last question that you asked about, I guess.
so like 2145 is a manifested channel, and then 1858 is a projected channel. What's the 1648?
It's also a projected channel because it goes.
Oh, that's projected.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. At the same time, I think you said something about initiating as well. Like we have this energy of thunder, right? So that it also has an energy. I believe it has a kind of young energy to it. It gets enthusiastic about something, and then it can develop mastery. But what we are bringing in today more from human design is that there has to be the energy coming from somewhere in order for those skills to be expressed.
Yeah, it feels more initiating than 1858, but at the same time, I've got 52-9 defined as well, and 1222. So those are both energy channels as well. So
yeah, I mean, you have an interesting design with a lot of different types of gates and channels. So yeah, richness.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Who else? Yeah, Momo.
Let me see if I can turn my camera on real quick. I wasn't planning on showing up, but here I am. I have a question about, I'm always just as surprised as everyone else. I have a question about I have the 40 gate and hanging, so I don't have the 16. And what's interesting is from one of our other calls, I've noticed that I tend to identify with the other side pretty well, probably because I'm conditioned there, right? Or like I'm seeking it. So I'm like aware of that archetype a little bit more. I'm definitely aware of my 48, the fear of inadequacy. I know that's not the only way you can look at it, but that part really speaks to me. And the librarian archetype definitely speaks to me. I'm always looking for that, but I always feel like I don't have enough of it. So I definitely relate with that. But the 16 part, I was curious to understand, like I just like looked at the Unlock Your Design 16, I just like looked through the summary just to give myself a little, there's my librarian wanting more depth and information. But I'm curious to understand how they work together. like I know mine's hanging, right? And that's where my conditioning, but right now with the transitions, I get the feel for the whole gate without it being someone else's. Like I get to
Mhm.
feel that this whole week. So I'm curious, like when you do have the whole channel, like how does the librarian and enthusiast work together? Like what's the teamwork that happens there and how does that show up for anyone who has that channel? Or yeah, that's my question.
It is the gate of talent, and there are a lot of projectors, because we said before, it's a projected channel that have that. And I happen to know a few of them. I've spoken about that before, that are chiropractors, and one of them also have the 5818. So they have that whole side of the logical pattern recognition that Benjamin was speaking about as well. So if you have depth and you have versatility, like that process that's possible is so much more than if you only have versatility or if you only have depth. So that's why we call it the gate of talent, because it has both. And that's what I feel in those people, and especially chiropractors, because it's logical, it's looking at the pattern, and it can go deep, and it also is versatile, possibly in the solutions of that. And I also feel that it's artistic in a sense, and can be musical as well. There might be a way that those people use instruments, whether those are tools or musical instruments, in a way that it seems like they are one with the instrument. They're becoming the instrument, and that's what we were wanting to convey as well in the image on the website and that I showed in the beginning of the presentation with enthusiast, because it's when you identify so much with the piano, it's like your fingers become in connection and that becomes one unit. But it also takes that depth of learning something many times. And then I think that the depth is not always from this lifetime or this timeline. It seems to me that some people that have this channel, it's like babies that are like 4 years old, and you see them, you hear them play the violin or something, you're like, not either from this world, maybe, but it's for sure not from this lifetime. So that is also a frequency and an art that this channel, especially when the whole process is there, can tune into and express.
So I have a follow-up question then. Since it's in the throat gate, the 16, and if it's like, let's say like you have the whole channel, let's say, and this might not be correct, my understanding of it, so just chime in if it's not, but it's fear of inadequacy. If we were to look at the gates from the fear standpoint and it connecting into the 16, for some reason, I thought it was almost like if the throat archetype was speaking. Like sometimes when someone's speaking, you can tell which archetype in their throat is coming out. And I was imagining it to be them speaking to that fear. Like there might be a hint of that fear of it. Like if we were to talk about in the artistry music space that you were talking about, and let's say they had the whole channel, would this be a way this could come out? Just you can clearly tell that I don't have the channel because I'm trying to use my mind to understand it. but like, let's say if you're a musician, you have the artistry, you have that talent, right? Innate talent or whatever. And would that fear of inadequacy come out through the throat, maybe maybe as an insecurity, or like not feeling like you have, like, or would that not come out if you have the whole gate? Does that make sense?
I don't think that everything is only based on mechanics and black or white. So definitely this channel can express itself in a low frequency, and then that would absolutely come out. Or it could express itself in a higher frequency, and then you wouldn't notice that. But it's a frequency band, and we're never safe in one frequency. So definitely. And there can also be, I believe, like a development where maybe in the beginning that comes out, but then there is more embodiment, because that's really what the 48 says. The 48 in the high frequency says it's about feeling deep into the experience, deep into the body, deep in being here. I'm looking at Yosei because I know she's on stage a lot. Like it's like feeling, and sometimes I know that she's nervous, but usually people don't feel that on the outside. She's a Taurus in her sun, and she's on stage, and it feels really grounded from the audience standpoint. So I also think that when we're speaking about a lot of the splenic gates, the unease or the inadequacy or the fear or the weird smell, whatever gate we go to, it can also be an inner experience, because it is for that being to a fear that's supposedly back in time making us survive. But now in the evolution, we're not insects or reptiles anymore. So sometimes it's like an inner alchemy that needs to happen. And it's not necessarily that it comes out from on the outside, but of course it can. We've all heard the stuttering and we've all been there and heard that, where it is coming out all the way up. So the low frequency and the high frequency are both a possibility.
Right. Right, got it. And I just saw Ben's comment and that hit the spot. I think I was so stuck on the fear of inadequacy perspective, but my feeling is more like 48 brings awareness of the unknown. That makes a lot of sense. That would be like a more, not creative, but I can see that being a more empowering way of looking at that. So thank you, Ben. And thank you for that, Bella.
Yeah, thank you. So I would really love the dialogue around this. So I'm going to want to have the interaction. So if you want to know something, be precise and give an example why that's interesting to you. Or if you want to come in and share something, that's also super welcome, because these are community calls and there is a little bit of a presentation in the beginning for us to be able to lean into the energy and feel what it is and feel adequate enough that we have enough information to be able to be in interaction around that. So that's really what those community calls are for. And then there are other calls that are more like Q&A and more the presentations that I and Ashley do to welcome you into a zodiac season or something like that. So let's start with Brandy and then with Erin.
Yeah, in the chat, Benjamin said it's like having this big field and what can be pulled out. But I would say that it's more like having a library. And when I come into contact with that energy, I have 16, I don't have 48. It's like somebody's database and the energy of that. And all of a sudden, I know what's important out of that to whatever our focus is, to bring those pieces out and master them and put them together into something coherent because it's in the throat center. And for me, this has actually been, I've only been doing this for less than a year. And this is one of the places, I've got 5 hanging gates. And this is one of the places where I have been able to identify my not self, because it does give me energy for things, but I've learned to recognize when they're not in alignment with my strategy and authority. When I'm only getting this because it's somebody else's interest or somebody else's energy, and they're like co-opting me, is what it feels like. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that both can be true somehow. That yeah, it feels like a field when we have versatility with depth together to tap into. It feels a bit like that well. There's like a field, a well, and there are things in there. And then exactly what Brandy said as well. So I feel like yes, we are tuning into this gate. Let's go to Erin.
Hi, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. Okay, I have 16.2. It's in my Mercury. I am a writer by choice and dream and passion. And like, it is my job. It is everything that I do. I'm very curious about 16 more generally, like just the way that it shows up, but mine is in detriment. And I also have line 2. So what I'm understanding about it is that it's the cynic. And when I put out my writing into the world, and I'm a manifester as well, so I think maybe this is part of it, but I feel like my writing is either received with like, people are either very drawn to it and they understand what I am saying, or they completely misunderstand me and paint me like completely the wrong way. Like they assume things from what I have written, and I'm like, how did you even get there? Because that was not what I meant at all. So I'm really curious about how you see like line 2, how that fits in. Because to me, when that does happen, I have the experience of being like, oh, I've been very deeply misunderstood. I now want to go away and hide and not write at all anymore.
Okay, thank you, Erin. You and I have the same Mercury. So I have Mercury also in gate 16.2, and that in the Gene Keys would be our relating sphere, or our voice, our message out to the world. And a line 2 is always going to have projection. So there is both going to be the projection, especially if we put something out, then the projection is often what comes back. It can also be what we project, and what Ra speaks about in that cynicism keynote, which is line 2. It's that we are going to exactly be able to look if somebody they have the skills, but is there the energy for the manifestation? And it can be quite harsh in that way. If we look at the lines of the sphere of relating in the Gene Keys, the second line is called feedback. So it's a spontaneous projection or spontaneous feedback that comes from, if we say that the second line, if we take the lines as the elements or the chakras, the second chakra would be like a sacral response. And I know that you're a manifestor, you don't have a sacral, but if we think about the second line as this kind of spontaneous feedback, and that is what, when you put something else in the world, is going to come back. And I know, because there's also versatility in your writing, there's a versatility in your expression, the same as with me. So sometimes what comes back, it just seems like it's completely, it was like a little narrow thing that was taken, and then that's being projected. And at the same time, I feel like the ability to recuperate with that 16, because it has that cynicism and it has a bit of that ability to then identify with, go back and identify with something else. It feels like it doesn't stay. It's a Mercury gate, so it doesn't stay. Or I would say that is a recommendation to shake it off a little bit, because there's work to do, and Mercury is fast, and Gemini is fast. So, yeah, I absolutely understand what you mean. And in terms of, maybe one more thing, in terms of the simplification of the line. So I'm posting this every single transit. I created this from the 64 Keys, the German website, a few years ago, which is a simplification. So here we don't have cynicism as a keynote for the second line. We have the word sharp-wittedness, objective sharp-wittedness that exposes illusions. So this would be same as saying like, okay, there's a skill, but if there's no energy, we can't manifest anything, right? That's part of the cynicism. The ability to self-assuredly express objective and astute assessments. So that is part of when people are like, Bella, like, I didn't expect you to say that. Like, I didn't, like, you just put me on the spot, or like in however that expression goes. And sometimes that's what the 16 will do, because it knows that sometimes it can, that spontaneous feedback, it's cutting through something. But then you see here in the shadow, the compulsive cynicism that is based on objective assessment, but can be carried to excess and be offending, right? So so there is even that ability, Erin, in us to do that. Like, we can use it for good and we can use it for bad. And I think the important thing is to be aware when we express something, when we write something. If it comes too spontaneous, maybe it can be perceived, and maybe rightly so, in a way that is a bit too, in one way or another, too much.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Fun. Hey. Okay. Who wants to continue to weave? Yeah, Ben, another Ben, a second Ben. Great.
Another splenic manifester too. You got two Bens, two splenic.
We had 3 manifestors already today speaking. That's crazy.
Come on.
4.
Wow.
Everybody speaking today is a manifester. The throat is like very active right now.
So I did miss like the first 3 minutes of the call, so I might be a little behind, and that's one of the reasons why I wouldn't share. But since you're just so, come on, people, let's go. I'm here. So I have the 48.2, and I am connected. I'm connected. The spleen's connected to throat, given this transit with the 16. So basics first. Are we first line of gate 16 today, or are we in second line?
We're already in the third line.
Oh, we're already in third line.
I believe.
Trial and error. Let's go. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm trial and error. This works. So what now superpowers do I have? So now the 48 is connected to the 16. I'm grounded now. I'm a mountain. My environment's in mountains. I just landed in Sedona. And right behind me, I have like a trail in this backyard, and I go up, and I'm literally like the biggest view on the planet. Like, it's amazing. And then entered a new relationship. I'm a 4-6, and she's a 1-3. So it's that foundational piece. And we're grounding. We just got here about a week ago. And I heard somewhere on the transit, this is what we're looking towards, to what we want to identify with. So I'm just curious on how, in this new foundational spot that I'm in, I'm going to begin my human design readings again, sharing human design with people. And then I do meditation. I do really extensive meditation. That's what I do. And yeah. And now it's like, okay, I know I could like chill, like I'm still in rest mode. I'm in like 3 days being here. My partner's been here for about a week and a half. So just went into the dip, and then I had enough energy to like start doing the grocery store shopping, start integrating some things, do a little build. Probably got an energy spurt of like 4 hours today before I'm like, all right, I'm tapping out again. And then Wednesday, yeah, just I guess the question is, I can't keep going without acknowledging the opportunity that this is. So thank you, Bella. So is this like the time where it's still get rooted, still like discovering like everybody's rhythm and the new rhythm of just what's available here? And then I'm assuming I don't want to go to scarcity of finances, and I also got to start creating some finances. So if I look into my own intuition around 48 and 16, I know 48 is a projected gate, the gate of depth, or the well of depth, which is all of this, I don't want to call it knowings, but knowings, all these things that are good for well-being, and all these tips and tricks for life, and like lots of wisdom, especially like around meditation. And it's like I gotta wait to share it. I can't just share it without the invitation. I've felt that before. I know what that's like. So now 16, now the 16 is activated to the throat. So does that now, I wouldn't say give me, first off, is it still the projected gate even when you have the full connection? Or it's still a projected gate, so they're still waiting for the invitation?
Wait, let me backtrack. Do you have only the 48 or do you have both in your own chart?
Only 48.2.
Sorry?
48.2.
Okay, so that's the hanging gate for you. Yeah, it's always
Yeah.
going to be a projected channel. And like we said in previous like dialogues, it's a lot about, is there the energy? It's not so, the invitation is always the basic thing that we say in human design. It's like a projected channel needs the invitation. However, what Ra speaks a lot about in the line companion in gate 16, is there the energy or not? I feel, listening to you, knowing that you're a 4-6, I feel drawn to your enthusiasm. And when you're externalizing something that you're excited about, like you have moved, that you're going to share about human design, that you're doing meditations, I feel naturally drawn to that because you're a 4-6 and there's this externalization of what you love. So you're not a 1-3. You probably you didn't create human design. You probably took something and synthesized something in terms of the meditations that you're sharing that is like really cool, but you're doing it your way and you're externalizing that. So as long as you do that and what you're speaking about is something that you truly identify with, then naturally people are going to resonate. And the people that are not connecting to it is not necessarily even wrong. It's like, it's just not your people, because if you're in a new place and you're a 4-6, you are there to find your people and your partner in some way in your little coming together. She has a bit more of that foundational energy, or bring that foundation into place in your
and
connection.
Taurus rising, or Taurus sun. Yeah. Got all kinds of grounding. Okay. No, I don't feel that. I really hope. Speaking of hope, I saw something in the cycles when you're doing the slides. Is the theme for hope? Is that what's happening in a quarter? In this quarter, there's like hope as the motivation. Is there a collective motivation happening? Did I see that earlier on this call?
I don't know if that is happening. I know that Aaron, I think his name is, was playing with the different quarters, with a different aura types, with a different he might even have brought in that. What I know, no, the hope would be in the neutrino weather right now, but that is changing every time we have the color changing, that would be changing. So that is 6 times in every line, and every line is changing every day or every week. Wait, in every line that is changing every day, there are 6 colors. And that's why we would have the neutrino weather change through the day with a different fear, hope, desire, so forth.
Wow. I've been telling people about these calls that I've been on. I'm like, y'all, I'm like Harvard University human design. Like these are Harvard University human design. This is so great. I'm like a freshman right now, still, like maybe sophomore. All right. So great. So yeah, so what I was gonna say is having the 16 or not 16, I don't feel like that is something that's a variable in my expressing. whatever there is for me to express. So I'll cut the time here.
Let us
I
just know what is this channel that connects to your throat, because I think that if we
It's
know
the
that,
20
we're gonna.
just like Benjamin.
Okay.
521, and then I got the 31-7.
Oof. Yeah, both of you attest to that it's almost when you have that strong ego manifesting channel, that it seems like it's not that easy to tune into, for like you both are a bit hesitant about the splenic part, which I think is interesting. And I feel like it goes really back to basics, like the instinct of the body. And of course, then depending on, both of you have it defined. Yeah. So there is a consistency, and there needs to be a trust in that the body knows. Because sometimes with the ego manifesting, that's where manifestors burn out, because they go with that. And then that's also why
Without
you
the body.
need the times of recuperation.
Like without being in the body.
Yeah,
Like they
I
just
mean,
headwise, like head forth, let's go, let's do this, but without the connection of the body as well.
yeah, and you have a pattern for humanity. You have the 31-7 and you're 4-6. You have the pattern of the future for humanity, and the word would probably be better if everybody did human design and everybody was meditating, right? You're already tapping into that pattern. But then the question is, what is happening with your sacral energy? What's happening with your grounding? What's happening with your immune system and your health? So you do want to look after that. And it is a good thing when you come to a new place to set those habits and this healthy environment for you to be able to have the body taken care of, so you can become the crazy manifestors pulling rabbits or whatever you're pulling out of your hat.
All right. So I thought I was gonna be one last question, but this will be one last question. So I'm obsessed with spleen. I discovered I was like around, I get like twinkles and spasms and like all kinds of, I call them whispers or twitches and all kinds of things all over my body. Like it's just like literally a working orchestra all the time. And I was present to these sensations before I even heard about human design. And then when I heard about human design, really discovered spleen, I was like, holy moly. So I have goosebumps as I'm talking. It's also cool that I can share this in a community where they get it and it becomes alive. But I have like 15, 20 friends that literally like count on spleen for their life. Like they're like, what does spleen say? What does spleen say? And I get pretty instant answers. I know they say there's like, I only call it a myth, but like spleen only, like the whisper only happens once. And I'm like, you just got to ask it a different way. You just got to orient yourself a different way next time. Anyways, so spleen's for safety. And that's authority. Now, if I keep going towards spleen, will that keep bringing, like, yeah, safety is powerful, and that space of safety, that's when like the channels come in, the downloads come in, that's when the full sharing comes out. And at the same time, it's like living a life doing things that make you comfortable, going towards the things that bring you comfort, versus you got to be on the edge of the line a little, you got to be on the edge of your seat, like you got to go beyond a little safety, right? So if I keep orienting everything in my life around spleen, am I living a life of safety? Like, I don't know why I'm making this a bad thing, but there's just a level of, I guess, okay, so
I understand what you mean. I understand. Ashley speaks a lot about that because she believes that she has like internalized quite a lot of trauma. So she says, investigate your nose, because there is sometimes layers to peel in your nervous system that makes you say no, when actually it might not necessarily be a no. So she says, investigate your no. What is the channel that defines your spleen for you?
6. Spleen to heart.
Yeah, so that is the way that you have the whole process to the spleen, which is about smell, which is about discernment of who is in and who is out. So that's really your process. When you say, oh, you have to ask your spleen another way, I feel like you're speaking about your G and your throat that are connected through the 31-7. It's like you're becoming a self-predicted predictor that has a dialogue with yourself. That is not a splenic process, I would say. So it's way more when something smells wrong, you're not going to go there. And that could be literally or more metaphorically. Something doesn't smell good. You would not be with your partner if she, in some sense, in any kind of layer of being, she doesn't smell right to you. That is the process that needs to be respected as your inner authority. So it's actually quite simple when it comes to the spleen. You don't have to make it more. It's actually quite simple. And so I would go back to super basics and understand that 44 and the 26. And that's also when you, exactly like you say, when you're respecting that connection, when you're going to be able to have the right circumstances, we could say, to express your transmission. But you need to trust that 44 in knowing who are the allies, where is their teamwork, where is this interference. So maybe even using the gene keys a little bit to understand the 44 better, so that you can understand what true synergy is in that sense.
Ah, mine's blown. I got nothing. Speechless. Thank you. Beyond gratitude.
Thank
And
you. And good
all those
luck.
things.
Come back and let us know how everything is going.
Yeah.
Don't burn out.
Yeah.
Go with
Yeah.
like what the manifester knows how to like, not like what you not do is often where there's real power with the manifestation.
Thank you.
Thank you. What else? Yeah, Brendy, please.
Yeah, that was really helpful. Just, I got something from his 48. Because when I was talking about how I'm noticing that this is where I'm conditioned the most, that's what it is. Like, I've been conditioned to ignore my smile because that's what mine is, and like do it anyway, provide this energy to the other person when I'm like, this, I don't really want to, like, I feel compelled to do it. I feel conditioned to, this is what you're supposed to do. And yeah, that was really, really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. And this is again where awareness is key to all this, because we could be acting out of the not self anywhere. In a defined center, an undefined center, it doesn't matter. Like there's always that not self possibility. Anne.
Yeah, I'm just curious about, I have the 1648 unconscious, but I have it in Pluto. So I was just curious about how it sits with Pluto.
Which one do you have in Pluto?
Both. I have the channel 48 in my design, and I just have the 48 in my personality.
For which is your Pluto?
Oh, for Pluto.
The 48 or the 16?
Oh, 48, sorry.
Of course, yeah, because you wouldn't have Gemini. Yeah, because that is, so Pluto is generational, and there are quite a lot of people in our community that would have the 48, the Libra in Pluto, and that have all those gates that are in the splenic center in the codon ring of matter, right? So it's a generation that are here to tap back into the body and to that codon ring of alchemy. That's Virgo actually, but to do those gates that are there in Libra and in Virgo. And we could simplify it and say Pluto is the deepest transformation. It's part of the unconscious. So it's the unconscious becoming conscious. It usually doesn't happen in the beginning of life. It doesn't usually happen to a young soul. It happens when it's becoming so uncomfortable so that you not look at it. And here the deepest transformation, Pluto, comes from feeling deep into the form. And that is one of those quotes that Richard has in his book that, I don't know if it's in his book or if it's in our archetypes, but it's like, is the librarian or the 48 says, I don't necessarily care if I'm feeling ecstatic pleasure or excruciating pain. What I care about is to feel deep into the form. And this is also when we look at the divine union, the feminine masculine between the 48 and the 21, which is the programming partner, where the 48 would be the feminine and the 21 would be the masculine, where it has that ability to feel so deep into the form. But if it's Pluto, there has been timelines or lifetimes, however you want to see it, or ancestry generations, where we didn't dare to feel deep into the form because there was so much pain or so much inadequacy or whatever the thing is. It's like impossible to feel that deep into the form, because if it's only excruciating pain, like why would we even go there? So it's a deep work that has to do with feeling into form. And I would say it's a feminine work. It's an embodiment work that lies there. And at the same time, because we are speaking about evolution astrology a lot in Unlock Your Design, we are often helped by understanding the polarity point, which is the programming partner, which is the other side of that 48. We should be looking at that whole axis of Libra and Aries. So me and we. What is the balance between me and we as you're doing that embodiment work? And then on the inner plane too, the inner feminine and the inner masculine. So it's, yeah, those are some of the cues of how to work with Pluto, and then a little bit connected to having the 48 there.
Thank you.
So do we have any of our homies, I was gonna say, Jose, Mary, Deborah, like the people, Joe, Keely, that are with us more in the inner circle and walking the transit scale with us? Robin as well. Dave, like a lot of you are here. Like, what's up? I only heard like voices that I've never heard almost. Yeah, Robin.
Okay, I wasn't sure if wanted to share. I don't have this colored in, but what I have noticed since the 20 came in, and I have the 3420 anyway, since it's passed, but it's moved to the Jupiter, and then with the 16 in the sun, I'm feeling very agitated. Like things that I would normally be able to let pass or find my different way to say it in a less shocking manner. I've been feeling very like just weird. So I was thinking, because it to me sometimes feels like, oh, now my bully is taking over, and I've really tried to not put that on other people. So yeah, I guess maybe I don't know if I have a question. That's just how I've been feeling this since maybe like Friday, after Friday, I should say.
Yeah, I was in a call with, we are a few women from the Gene Key ambassadors that are meeting weekly, and I was the one bringing in the weather, because usually when I sit here, I can't even have the car, like the computer, so that you see behind me, because there's so much in the afternoon, there's so much sun coming in, and now you can still see me quite well. And it's, yeah, it was so dark. It was so, the sky was just so dark, and I felt exactly that kind of thunder energy, and knowing that this is thunder over earth in the elements, like I felt that, and I was saying it to a few people, like I feel agitated, like I feel that kind of vibration of nervousness, but I can't pinpoint what it is, right? And then, like I said in the beginning as well, because we have Chiron and Mars in Aries, that's also an agitation in that energy. So I definitely, and then there's a lot of difference with being in Taurus and being asked by Jupiter in Taurus to ground and see what's valuable and see how we create that foundation for the 12 next years and all that. And then suddenly the expansion potential is in Gemini, which is super mutable and super fast. And then we have a conjunction between Mercury and Uranus today, as we saw, which is like that nervous system thing that's like, it's not only communication on a kind of this level, it's like communication with the whole wiring of the nervous system. So I believe that what you're saying is that actually you're sensitive to the weather that is very much going on. And I think many of us can feel it, because in that call, like the whole call had to do with the weather, and also in many places, funnily enough, because we're all around the world, it was storms and rain and thunder. And in some places there were thunder, but nothing came through, and then it still feels like there hasn't been a release. Like the whole call was very much to what you were saying. So I'm not surprised.
Yeah, that explains that there's no release, because that's like weird. Usually I'm able to like move through it pretty like, this is what it is. We're moving, like not we're moving past it, but like it settles, but it hasn't. And I guess that's at least what I've read about Jupiter moving to Gemini is going to feel like this in the next couple days. Hopefully not so much the whole year, but yeah. And when I was getting agitated, it has a lot to do with the presence of others not being in the presence in the now, and being able to be aware with everything that's going on. And then that's what's like triggering it, because it's like, that's my earth. So it's like, that's me. And then you're just not able to be there with me. So yeah.
Yeah, and that's also just the keynote of where Jupiter is right now. It's in Gemini, but it's in gate 20. So of course that presence and that gate as well, because it's creating that manifesting generator channel, the 3420. There can be a lot of just busyness for the sake of busyness and a lack of presence, and people seeming like they're not available. And it's okay to not be available when you're doing your thing, but if you are with somebody, then there's we needed a sense, we need an awareness about that, and to be able to consciously choose to be present. And I think that is also an ability, because what I could feel today is like, okay, I'm aware of the outer weather, I'm aware of the inner weather, and at the same time I can hold myself enough to come on this call and to be put together enough to be able to do that. So that's also coming back to the harmonic gate, the 48, like how much can we hold inside and still function? Because I'm here identifying to the best of my ability with this call, and then there are processes that are going on at the same time, and hopefully we have that ability to go in and out of situations where I might have the possibility to feel deep into the form after this call, or I might have the ability, like I might have the urge or the spontaneous splendid kind of response of like, okay, like I need to shake as a gazelle or something to get some of the energy off. And I feel, again, it's so important to trust our body, our being. And with this energy, any kind of movement, any kind of sound, any kind of breath. I remember today that I haven't been doing breath exercises almost at all since when I went to Europe 2 months ago. And then suddenly I was back in my old habitat, and as a tourist, like usually doing the same thing. I was like, oh, but this is the time of the day where I used to do breath exercises. So to also, what we bring with us from Taurus can be those healthy habits, because a lot is going to move fast and feel a bit of electric or agitated. So yeah, great theme to bring up for all of us. Thank you. Yeah, let's go to Gail.
Hello, everyone. I don't really have anything to say in particular. I noticed, like Bella mentioned it earlier, that you can look at your gene keys and there's things in your human design that you don't know. So today in conversation, I realized I have 16-6 in my DC, and I have no idea what DC is. I read it, but the meaning or whatever hasn't come alive to me yet. So if I have any question is, what is that? But it's interesting because like that is a piece that I would have never seen if I never looked at my human design. Absolutely. Anything to respond, Bella? Fine if not, but you might leave me to go investigate myself, but
yes, I am. No, or am I? To move this away. All my tabs. So you're speaking about the angles or the axes that we were speaking about before in the wheel. So astrology, so everything that we are speaking about is what's on the sky, and we can speak about this in terms of either the constellations and what we are using here in those calls and in human design and Gene Keys is the tropical zodiac, and then we also have all the gates on the inside, right? So if somebody was born in this moment, they would have on the eastern horizon, their ascendant, their rising sign would be Scorpio. And on the other side of that, so that would dictate where the first house starts. And on the other side, it's the DC. So it's if this is what's on the horizon and rising, you could say when they are born, what's on the opposite side, the programming partner, is the DC. And so this is more in the first house about self, and this is more in the 7th house about other. Right? So this could often be the partners, the long-term partnership for life, and these kinds of things, ascendant, descendant. Like what's my task in life, what I'm here to see around me, the process is the task that I'm here, but this is something that's more possibly shared with others. And in this case, the person would have it conjunct the 2 planets. And then you're going to see that there is another axis. So the highest point of the sky would be the midheaven, and that is very much the outer, what we are here to express in the world, or where we can be seen as authorities, the highest point of the sky in the moment we're born, and that is on the cusp, on the 10th house, depending on the house system, but here we see in the 10th house. And then the IC, it's very much more connected to the inner, or even the family, the upbringing, the 4th house. So we're going to have the cusp of the 1st and the 7th house, and the cusp of the 4th and the 10th house. And that is then what you would like to weave. What does it mean to have in your life the task of 43? What does it mean to have the other side of self, like with other? What does it mean to have gate 23? So the same for you. You actually always, I recommend looking at both of them so that you understand inner, outer, self, other. And you can also just Google, because there are of course many different astrologers like adding so much more to it on how to look. But what I like is that from Gene Keys, we do know what programming partners are. So most of those of us that are in the Gene Keys, we are going to be able to weave and understand those pairs. In this case, it's also a harmonic gate. So here it would actually be interesting to have that as on the axis, because it's both the harmonic gate and the opposites in the wheel, which we have a few times in the wheel, things being like that.
Yeah,
Was that
that's
helpful?
interesting. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
helpful and it's interesting because like my husband has a 16 and he has a full channel, and my kids have the 16. But when I actually think of people who would be my idols or my heroes, or like Da Vinci and stuff, a lot of them have the 16 in their chart prominently. So I can see this, how it's actually moving through in my desires or in my interests or whatever. So thanks for that.
Yeah, super cool. Great. Let's go back to Erin.
Thank you. Okay, I have a question about how the Gene Keys and human design intersect here. I don't know if this is a thing, but so 16 is thunder over earth. And we've talked about how that it brings that feeling of almost like static electricity. And then 48 is water over wind. How do they, like, does the channel itself have any sort of, I find those images really helpful within the I Ching. Does the channel have something that's like that, or is that where human design and I Ching kind of splits?
I mean, I had this up before. Where is it? There is nothing in terms of the wheel that is showing. There are interesting things in the wheel that we can see how the yin and the yang, the lower line is changing, but there is the way that we are looking at the sky is that, and the way that we are seeing, this is like another way of looking at it, the way that we are seeing there are different orders that you could order it in. So the way that we are ordering it, usually when we look at it, when I do the presentation in the beginning, it's the order of the lower trigram. And that's when it starts, we could say with 3, the internal child, and it goes around the whole way, depending on the element, and it ends in gate 42. Here, just to show you, and I love this because it's connected to astrology. So here it's actually doing the same, but instead of doing it on the lower trigram, we're doing it on the higher trigram. So the whole entire wheel starts with the 51, thunder over thunder, because that is that kind of pre-notion of something. And then it ends here where we have water over mountain in the 39. Which is liberation, right? So initiation, liberation, that's the way of doing the wheel. But in terms of what I know about the body graph, it comes from the tree of life. So that's what Ra was getting from the voice, that it's the way of connecting the gates comes from that. And it's really in that sense, it's about circuitry, right? So we know that what I often say, circuitry, you have archetypes that care about the same thing. In the sacral center, yes, they're all about energy, but like they are all connected to different other centers. So they don't necessarily care about the same thing. Some are tribal, some are collective, some are individual. But looking at circuitry, we understand why certain gates come together. But that is not based on the I Ching and the wheel. However, there are still things to discover. There is one woman from, I guess is she from Bulgaria? No, she's from Hungary, I think, in the Gene Keys. She's a 4/6 projector with only 2 centers. And she did a presentation with a changing line, and just similar to what I showed you from Sergio Arboleda. She was finding those geometries within the I Ching. So I think it's it's kind of reality, and we are probably able to see to the level of how we are expanding in our awareness. But yeah, no, I don't know any in terms of the elements and the trigrams and the circuitry within the body graph. I don't know that there would be a pattern.
Thank you.
David.
Good afternoon, everybody. So it's interesting because I don't have the 16. I only have the 48, but I'll erase the but. And it's I do see all of the depth and the learning that I have had through the years in this 16th. Because it's interesting that one of the things that I saw is that in our openness, the depth of the learning curve is higher because it's something that we don't have from birth. And while I was reading here the 16th, it's really true when they say the gate 48 without the 16 might feel that they don't always have the energy to communicate their depth. And actually, yeah, because sometimes I'm trying to explain something that is important to me, to someone, and sometimes I cannot. And it's quite powerful when I'm talking about something that creates enthusiasm in me, because even the other person feels it with this bigger intensity, especially if they have their solar plexus open, because my energy is so intense that they are like, wow, like overwhelmed. And actually now with these conjugations that are occurring, I'm a splith, because originally I'm a triple splith, but then because of the activations that are occurring, I have the 16 and the 20 that are being activated and that are connecting with my 48, the 10 and the 34, and that create this urge to speak about things that work for me. Maybe that's a bit normal because I'm a 6-2 emotional generator, and I'm also here to speak about what works for me. And while I was reading here, along the years, one of the things that was very important for me was this part of repetition, because when people talked, or even when I seek for knowledge with this 48 librarian or whatever, I always go into this thing of, okay, you are saying this, but I also need to see it for myself, or even work it in me. And this part of the repetition, for a few years now that I started going deep into this part of daily practices and even working my energy, that I really found that it's important to have repetitions and to explore these different techniques and energy work. And actually it's quite important for me also to work these daily practices. And I didn't have the 16, so along the time that I studied in a more deeper way human design and Gene Keys, I only focused more in my activations and the tools that I had. And actually in these calls, I'm seeing also the things that I don't have, and seeing that maybe I'm also in the shadow of a bunch of them. Even in this 16th that says, in the shadow expressions, this energy can feel paralyzing, where you see the faults and allow perfectionist tendencies to stop yourself from even starting. And actually it's true, because for a while now that I want to put out this info product and even a mentorship to help people to stop smoking. And it's like there's something that pushes me back. And maybe it's also interesting to see in a more deeper way this shadow expression, because it also has this light expression that maybe can help me work out this fear of expressing myself. And yeah, actually it's cool that in these calls I'm seeing a bunch of gates that I don't have activated because I can see also what I'm deepening in my learning curve along the years, and actually acknowledging that maybe I'm leaving the shadow expression of some of these gates that I haven't even go deeper because they are not active in my profile. And yeah, Richard says here's something that captivated my interest. That is, the moment you take a stand and begin to follow your dreams, time becomes your ally rather than your enemy, automatically adapting itself to fit your needs. This is why experience is critical to this process of breaking free. It is not enough to daydream and plan how you might have how you might save the world. You have to actually begin the work. And yeah, actually, sometimes I get stuck in my open mind and the action is a bit more difficult. And yeah, it's cool that we have all of these calls and I'm actually learning a bit more of my openness, because it's also a place to create mastery and help other people that have it active by explaining what I learned in a more deeper way. And yeah, actually it's cool because these past few days I've having this urge to put in practice, okay, what I already wrote and created for this mentorship. And actually it's coming more and more. I don't know if it is because of also the 20 being activated and connected to my sacral and G, because of the 10 and the 34 creating more power for me to work and to create, and this 16 connected to the 48 that I also have. And actually it's cool that we are here also speaking and sharing, because it's important, even if I don't have it, because I'm also seeing that maybe I'm in the shadow of it instead of being in the light of it.
Yeah, a few things. So I feel you speaking to the 16. Remember that we are in the crossover planning right now, and we've been in the crossover planning for 400 years. So the 9 and the 16, the 37, 40, right? We are feeling these collectively. They've been coding the program for 400 years. And then we have been speaking, Robin was bringing the 20, right? 2034, which kind of that presence or non-presence. It's that, like, that's what we're moving into. Cross of planning, cross of the sleeping phoenix. So for many of us, especially when we read the 16 and the 9, we're going to feel familiar with it because it's there in the collective and it's working on us in time, like, poking us a bit. So it's super important for all of us to be aware of those global cycles that are there. And then I feel the other thing in the beginning, just to remember that the spleen is not a motor. So even if you have the 48 and the 16 together as a channel, as a process, the spleen is not a motor. So it's not necessarily any energy there anyway. And that's Ra's kind of whole point with this gate, the discernment, if there is energy for the skills to be expressed or not. And then I think there's one more thing I wanted to say. Yeah, the open centers, there's mastery in the open centers. I think that there is a kind of mastery. I think we need to be a little bit careful. I would say there's a mastery, and that mastery comes from a wisdom. Mastery, the way we speak about it as the city or the higher frequency of the 16, it is that you're so consistent and identified with one thing so that you cannot, like, be anything else than mastery. And it's almost the complete opposite with the open centers. And this is what I've watched in the completely open centers, that really the true mastery or the true wisdom is when there's not a preference. It's not defined. There are not even any hanging gates. It's wide open and it doesn't have a preference. It's so empty. So it's this perfect reflection, and it doesn't need to speak. It doesn't need to share mastery. It doesn't need, like, it's really there to be a presence of whatever is in there without having to hold anything as a preference. And I know I can see that sometimes in my own completely open emotional center or my completely open ego center. And I can have seen that in other people have open centers. That's the reflection ability, in some sense being a divine reflector, right, for people, as long as there is some kind of identification with, which would be more a keynote of definition. It's almost like the master is not yet there. So to know that there is wisdom in the open centers, I don't necessarily see it as sharing. I see it actually more, going back to Robin again, as a presence. If I can bring that presence of the wisdom of that open center into a field, then that can be a catalyst for somebody else to feel themselves, to feel where they're at, to understand more about their own definition. But that's an interesting, again, like, this is an interesting unpacking of what the open centers or undefined centers are really here to do. And of course, even more with the solar plexus mutation that is happening right now. With the mastery that can come there, I feel, from the people that have defined emotional centers and that are daring to speak to that with so many people, mostly maybe undefined emotional center, but also defined running away from their emotion, not wanting to feel, not wanting to rock the boat, not wanting any to do with that whatsoever. And then there are these people with mastery that dare to sit and be embodied, even when the waves are super high, and understanding that even in their own weather, there are waves and still dare to be there. The embodiment of that. And then the reflection as well from the openness of the experience that are there when we don't run away. So interplay between definition and openness is super, super beautiful, and it's what creates evolution and more embodied awareness. So thank you for bringing up all these different themes and unpacking. So I wanted to bring in one last thing. If you missed it, we had like a lot of people that were interested. It has to do with this energy that's coming from the electricity, what we are able to turn on in our nervous systems, in our bodies, what we are able to regulate. So we have worked a lot with the pathway of individuation in just the field, and we have done Moma, I think you were in it. Like we have done a few shorter things with fewer people. So just to let you know that there is still the $29 masterclass on the path of individuation, where Ashley and I basically go through this with you. We're speaking to you about those 3 spheres that are design and what they mean. We're speaking to you about the brand and the pearl, or the life's work. That is the personality side. So from design side, deep into the body, deep into the being, connected to the soul, to then the more conscious part of us, our expression, the throat gate we're speaking about today, the role that we're here to fulfill in the world, which is more of the doing, the masculine, the feminine. So that's still available for $29. And then we're actually doing this. So this is an expanded version with 19 lessons and like 13 hours of content. We're not going to have this available all the time, but it's basically me and Ashley taking those spheres from different immersions that we've done. So often there is like 2 hours or 1.5 hour, 2 hours teaching. There is a workbook that sometimes is like 50, 60, 70 pages. And we have never really sold these separately, all of them, but some of them were $97. So that's what the value would be. So this is available. I'll put it in the chat. And what we might do is, if enough people buy it and want to have some kind of container around it, we might be creating something similar to what we did with the Liberated Intensive, where there's also a call or something per sphere. So that's the thing to jump on if there's anything that you feel like, oh, I want to kind of liberate my more. So this is the long version, and I don't know, I think you have to go to my page or my wall or something to get the one that is just the shorter one. The shorter one has a webinar that is an hour and something. It has the teaching on the spheres, and it's 29. And people love that. That's why we decided to give everybody the possibility to go deep into each sphere, where we speak about the planet, we speak about the line, we speak about the gene key way of seeing it. So like that weaving that we always have between astrology and the lines, and then the kind of embodiment aspect that we have through the mechanics and the gene keys. So check that out. And then tomorrow, is there anything? No, tomorrow, no, that's just for the inner circle. Yeah, so that or the inner circle will be the next thing. The inner circle is where I'm doing a Q&A tomorrow and a chart interpretation Zoom call on the Gemini archetypes. And Ash is doing a workshop of the archetypes. I think it's the week after or something like that. So there's always the possibility to come in and play more with the stages of embodiment, where we're not only walking the wheel and it's falling like this column gate on line 3, but we are more consciously walking the wheel every line every day. We have Mary Yossi that's also helping us to tune into some of those keynotes, cynicism today, or like those words that's like, what does that even mean? But to have more of a tangible way of tapping in with the lines and the neutrino weather. So those things are available. And I think now we're going back, me and Ashley, to doing 1 week her, 1 week me. I'm back. I'm back from the other side of the world. So yeah, you will see her here next week. And yeah, thank you all for today. Maybe unmute and say goodbye.
Thank you, Bella.
Goodbye.
Thank you, Bella.
Thank you,
Adios. Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Thank you.
Bye.
Até a próxima.
Thank
See you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.